back to Airplane Mode. Today, you guys, we will be heading back over to the tutorial section of X-Plane, and we'll be doing a general autopilot tutorial for the Zibo 737-800. What I'm going to be covering in this video is pretty much all the functions of the autopilot, or in other words, I'll be covering what every single button that the autopilot is associated with does, and eventually I will be showing you guys exactly what everything should look like before your flight, and I will be briefly describing what you will need to do upon descent. With that being said, guys, everything has been set up. Our FMC is set. All my views have been set up, so everything is ready to go. We are currently parked here at the base of runway 4 left here at Boston Logan International Airport. We're super excited to get this video going. I hope you guys learned something from it. Without further ado, let's get started. Alright guys, so down here at our FMC, the only thing that's really starting to interfere with the autopilot is the N1 limit page. All that's really important is the outside air temperature. Pretty much this will be just a blank box, and when you click this, that will autofill. There with the outside air temperature in Celsius form, do not fill anything there with a little slash. What you could do is this slash and put that in. Do not do that, especially with this plane at least. If it's a more realistic plane, then do that, but with the Zibo, unfortunately that does not work, and it will interfere, and it will make it so that your V-speeds will not load properly like they should. With that, your D rating is really the max limit right here. It's 96, so there, as you can see, it's right there, that little line. So your throttles will only go right there when you arm N1 limit. With that, everything's pretty much set for the N1 limit. Everything here is set. The only thing we need is V2. But with that, we're pretty much done with the FMC. If you want a full configuration setup for the FMC, go ahead and check out my little video. With that, guys, we're going to go ahead and jump up to our MCP panel and start reviewing some information about the autopilot. Alright guys, so while we are going to be explaining pretty much all these buttons right here in detail, I'm going to make sure that this is a brief, quick explanation so the video does not drag on for that long. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and start off with our course, which is pretty much your track, or in other words, it's the direction over the grounds that is being followed. Your flight directors right here, they are both the same on each side. Without both of them on, the autopilot will not work, so just keep that in mind. So your flight directors, in short, compute and show the correct pitch and bank angles for the autopilot to know exactly where to go. Your auto throttle arm little button right there, if it's switched on, it will allow the set speed to be followed, so whatever's set here will be followed by the autopilot. Your N1 right here will advance the throttles to the max N1 limit, which is set by the FMC, which you guys saw in the N1 limit page. Go ahead and rewind the video if you do not know what I'm talking about. The speed button right here pretty much takes control of the VNAV, and it will fly as fast as is set right here in this little box. Your IAS/Mach box is basically the place to put your desired speed. This little CO button right here converts your set speed to Mach form, so if I were to push that, it would change it to its Mach form. This knob is just obviously changing the speed that is currently set right there for the autopilot. I think right now, yeah, the lowest limit is 100, so you can't do anything below that. Moving on to our speed intervention, it's pretty much only used when you need to make a quick change to the VNAV speed. Your VNAV right here, it's pretty much the altitude and speed settings from the FMC used to fly the plane with the autopilot, so the autopilot will correctly take all this information here, for example, the legs page, will take all that information and that information, and it will put it really into a form where the plane can follow it on autopilot. Now, your level change button will pretty much make the plane climb using the maximum N1 limit while keeping track with the speed set in the little speed box right here. Your heading right here, it allows the autopilot to fly the plane while you manually change the plane's heading 1 degree at a time. So for example, if I were to do this, you'll see a little line that should appear, yep, right there. You'll see that line, and pretty much if this button is set right here, the heading select, then it will make the autopilot fly towards this line. With that, we're going to go ahead and just leave it around 80 for now, or whatever. We'll just go 90. Not that big of a deal. This knob 1030 thing, I've tried to see what it does before. I'm not really quite sure what it does. Trust me, I did a ton of research to see what these guys did. They do not do anything as far as I know in the Zibo, so I always just leave those be. But the top button right here is obviously just what changes your heading. This little button, the heading select right here, takes control over LNAV, VOR localizer, or the approach button, and pretty much it will just make the plane, as I already said, fly towards this little line right there. With that, your LNAV is pretty much the button you press to have the plane follow the flight plan. In short, your flight plan that you filed right here, the autopilot will follow this route, not this little heading route right there. Your VOR localizer, pretty much once it's pushed, it will make your plane follow the ILS frequency set when you're in the threshold for your ILS approach. The APP button, or in other words, the approach button, will pretty much disengage the VOR localizer, but it will activate the glide slope lock and VOR lock, so pretty much you will be heading right towards the airport, altitude-wise and latitude-wise. Your altitude is pretty basic. It obviously just tells the autopilot how high or how low to fly. This little knob right here, in short, pretty much just allows you to change what altitude is set right here, and thus what altitude the plane flies at for the autopilot. This button right here, the altitude hold button, it pretty much just sets the altitude to where you pushed. So pretty much say you're at 2,000 feet, okay, and then you push this button right at 2,000 feet. That will auto set right there, and your autopilot will go ahead and pitch the plane up to match the altitude that is set right there. So that's just a nice little thing if you quickly need to cap your altitude as told by ATC. This little button right here, the altitude intervention, just like the speed intervention, it's used to make small altitude changes while using the VNAV, so not speed, but altitude. Your vertical speed button right here, it pretty much tells the plane how fast or slow it should climb, and it will change the pitch of the nose accordingly. Alright guys, the vertical speed box pretty much, it just shows how fast or slow you will climb. The down-up knob, when you push that down, it will make the plane's pitch lower, and when you push the up button, it will make the plane's pitch go higher. With that guys, your autopilot engaged, there's a whole little chart that I made out to explain this, and it's pretty basic. So the CMDA, this little column right here, so for the CMDA, it's used to have the plane follow all set speeds, altitudes, and the flight plan. So everything that you have set here, it will be followed once you turn that on. The CWS is the same for both of these A and B. And pretty much your CWS maneuvers the plane in response to the control pressures, or in other words, how much force is applied to the control column. So if I were to pull this back, the CWS button would help assist me in my little bit of a pitch up. With that, your CMDB, it pretty much is used for an auto land. So instead of using CMDA, which is a mistake that I commonly use when I fly ILS landings, you should use CMDB if you really want a full auto land. With that guys, these two things are the same. This guy really just disengages the autopilot, and you'll see that if I were to press, right now we have to turn on the flight directors. If I turn those on and then I activate my autopilot and then I disengage this, it will disengage all autopilot. There is an alarm which is right here, so you can always clear that, but you cannot turn any autopilot on unless you put the bar up. Then you can go ahead and change it accordingly. With that you guys, we're gonna go ahead and clear that really annoying alarm. And we're going to go ahead and review everything that you need to know, everything that needs to be really filled in, all these little boxes, and then we will depart out of here. I will explain everything that you need to know for your takeoff, your climb out, your cruise, and then I will explain in brief your descent autopilot. With that, you guys, let's get right on to what these guys should all look like. Alright guys, to start things off, the most basic thing to say is that the course is auto set. Do not touch the course unless you want to totally mess everything up, or if you totally know what you're doing, which I definitely don't when it comes to course. With that, the most basic thing that you're going to really start off doing is turning on both of your flight directors. As I already said, if just one of them is on, the autopilot will not work, so make sure that both of them are on if you're having a little bit of an issue. Now, your auto throttle should be turned on, or in other words, it should be armed. This N1 button right here, you don't really press until your engines are stabilized and you're ready to go to your maximum N1 limit. Your speed button is not pressed if you're going to be using VNAV for the flight, or in other words, it is pressed if you're going to be using vertical speed. So for your speed right here, what you really want it to be is pretty much your V2 speed plus 20. So if we head down to the FMC right here, init ref, and here we go, we're already on our takeoff reference page. You'll see that my V2 is 143, so add 20 to that, and that will make it 163. So you're going to go ahead and set 163 in this little box right here. With that, guys, you're pretty much going to turn on your VNAV if you want to fly a VNAV departure. This is the easiest in my opinion, as pretty much right when you turn that on, your plane will automatically fly to the right altitude and will fly with the correct speed for pretty much the entire flight. So that's the easiest to me versus vertical speed, where you have to constantly change the pitch of your aircraft. With that, guys, your heading should be set to the runway heading, or in other words, it should be set to the heading that the runway that you are on is. So if we're over here, you can see that I'm flying out of runway 4 left. So if we look at our airport chart, we can see that our heading is 36 degrees, which doesn't really make sense. However, it is just rounded up, which makes it 4. So with that, we're going to go ahead and set 36 degrees in right here. And that should be pretty much, or we'll go ahead and just set 34, even though that really doesn't make sense. We'll go ahead and set that, even though that is not what our charts are telling us. We'll go ahead and believe the autopilot. With that, guys, you're going to want to go ahead and turn on your LNAV, unless ATC tells you that you need to fly the runway heading, which in this case, you would go ahead and use heading select. And honestly, your plane will just fly you pretty much straight on this heading. Unless you change it, then it will go ahead and turn towards that. So unless ATC tells you to fly a certain heading for the whole flight, then go ahead and turn on the LNAV. Trust me, it will make your life a whole lot easier when it comes to flying this plane. Now, your altitude should be set to your first altitude restriction. In other words, if you want to fly an airplane mode departure, go ahead and set it right to your cruising altitude, which is what I'm going to do today. So I'm just going to set that to 37,000 feet, but I will show you guys what I mean by an altitude restriction. If you've been with me long enough, then you will know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you don't, and those of you who are new here, you can see that this right here, 1,767 feet, is our first altitude restriction. This is just saying 420 feet and above, and anytime that it says a B, it will be saying, for example, 420 feet and below. But this in general is your altitude restriction. When it says flight level right there, it's saying only 3 digits right there. However, that is short for 35,400 feet, and this is short for 37,000 feet. So with that, you guys, we're going to go ahead and move back up here. Pretty much everything is set, unless you want to fly a vertical speed departure, which, just in brief, is pretty much you wouldn't have this guy on right here, and you would have your speed set so that really everything, I don't know. So that is an issue, just for the record. If you turn on your speed while your auto throttle is armed, what's going to happen is it's going to go ahead and follow that, even though the autopilot is off. Just keep that in mind so you don't make that little mistake like I just did. So technically, you're going to have this armed. However, you will not turn this on until your really desired autopilot turn on. With that, for your vertical speed, if you were to use it in departure, you're going to go ahead and set this to a reasonable climb rate. So let's just say 2,300 feet. That will make your plane climb at 2,300 feet per minute. However, I really never like to use vertical speed, as I find it a little bit more complicated. Not that it really is complicated, it's just a little bit more to attend to. So that's why I pretty much always use VNAV in all of my videos. With that, that's pretty much everything. You do not turn on autopilot unless you're ready to and you're at a safe altitude. That is an issue, because if something goes wrong with the autopilot and you're only at 200 feet above the ground and it starts pitching you down, you are gonna probably end up crashing. So a reasonable altitude between 400 feet and 1,500 feet is pretty much perfect for your autopilot to be turned on, or in other words, your autopilot to be engaged. With that, you guys, we're going to go ahead and center ourselves right here, and we're going to go ahead and depart out of Boston. And I will go ahead and describe some of the climb out and cruise functions for the autopilot. Alright, you guys, now that everything has been set up and we are ready to get out of here, we're going to go ahead and release our parking brake, stabilize our engines at about 45%, and then we will go ahead and turn on our N1. Alright, there is 45%. Go ahead, turn on N1. It's going to go to its maximum N1 limit, and once it gets there, we're going to go ahead and just let the plane roll down the runway. Keep some forward pressure on the nose here. About 80 knots.
80 knots.
Release forward pressure just a little bit here. And what's going to happen is after we rotate, we're going to put our gear up, and at 1,000 feet, we're going to stabilize ourselves at about 10 degrees and turn on the autopilot.
V1, rotate.
Rotate right here. Okay, we're going to hold it at about 15 degrees here. Gear up. We're going to hold it right about here until 1,000 feet. And as I already said, once we reach 1,000 feet, we're going to go ahead and level ourselves off down at about 10 degrees, and then we're going to go ahead and turn on our autopilot. So we're approaching 1,000 feet here.
1,000.
Alright, there's 1,000. I'm gonna go ahead and stabilize a little bit here. Autopilot has been engaged, and as you can see, we are hands-free flying. I'm literally not touching a thing with my throttles or anything. This just auto set with the VNAV, and even though I really don't know why I keep saying insufficient fuel, we have plenty of fuel. Anyway, so as you can see, yeah, it's 250 right there and it's 230 right there. It will change once we reach that, or not necessarily once we reach that, but depending on what altitude we are at. With that, you guys, that's literally everything you need to be concerned about for your climb out. Now, the only exceptions are if ATC tells you to change your heading to something, in which case you would just hit heading select. And let's just do a demonstration. We hit that, and as you can see, it will turn towards the heading. We're going to stick with LNAV. It's going to continue turning because we actually have a turn here. Also, if you didn't set your thing to cruise and it's just at your basic altitude restrictions, go ahead and change those so you can make it up to your cruising altitude. But other than that, VNAV and LNAV will do the rest, and that's the beauty of autopilot. This looks a little steep, but trust me, it's just fine. With that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and quickly describe exactly what you have to do for descent. Now, once you reach top of descent, you need to have this set. So, for example, let's just say we need to descend to our first altitude restriction, which, let's just guess, 30,000 feet. So you would set this to 30,000 feet, you would bring it down to 30,000 feet. And then once it's there and you reach top of descent and your VNAV is on, you will automatically descend to that. Now, another good way to do it, and this is highly unrealistic, however, it's just one thing that I like to do to make my life easier. What I like to do is I like to just set this to 0, and then VNAV will just stop at each altitude restriction. You don't even need to worry about setting altitude restrictions as you go. The other way you could do it is by using vertical speed. You just set the altitude that you want to go to, hit vertical speed, and go down at as many feet per minute as you would like. With that, we're going to go ahead and put our gear off. Go ahead, put our flaps up. Auto brake can go off, and that's pretty much autopilot in a nutshell. Alright, you guys, with that, that's autopilot in a nutshell. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I really highly hope that it was helpful to you guys who are just starting out in X-Plane 11 maybe, or even just maybe starting out in the 737-800. I really hope it was informative. If it was, and you really did enjoy the video, please hit that thumbs up button down below and subscribe if you are brand new to the channel, as well as hit that bell icon down below so you'll never miss a beat on the Airplane Mode YouTube channel. With that, guys, I once again encourage you to subscribe if you are new, because we are so close to 100 subscribers, and that is going to be such a huge milestone for me at least, and I know we can do that. So subscribe if you're new. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!